Welcome everyone to our Pavilion panel discussion on moving up market, building out your ABM function. I'm Nicola. I'm the co-chapter head at Pavilion London, along with Tom Glasson. And this is one of the most discussed topics amongst Pavilion go-to-market leaders at the moment. And what I've noticed is there's rather a lot of confusion about it. Do we move up market? Will it make us more revenue? Should we be doing ABM? Are we doing ABM? We're paying for lots of tools, so I think we are doing ABM, but I'm not quite sure if it's working. Well, I thought it was time to get some answers. And who better to do that with than some very straight-talking ABM experts in this space. So we're going to be chatting about this for around 40 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So as we go, do throw your questions into chat. And either myself or Graham, who runs the marketing group at Pavilion, will dive in and make sure we answer as many as possible. So do keep introducing yourselves and giving yourselves that rating if you are doing ABM. And while you do that, we're going to introduce our panelists. Be great if you could each do a quick intro before we get started on our discussion. So Steph.
Yeah, hi, I'm Steph. So I've been in B2B for, well, my whole career really. And I work at Sixth Sense. I'm the marketing director here. And as part of that role, I've really got exposed to a lot of ABM strategies for customers and also other people in the industry. So I think expert is a big word, but I definitely talk about ABM a lot. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Steph. And 4 out of 5, you are an expert in this group, absolutely. Winnie, tell us about you.
Hello, hi, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Winnie Palmer, I am the EMEA head of marketing at Seismic. We have been doing quite a lot recently since the down market, I'll say, is to start transitioning from historical, more waterfall demand gen to an ABM play. We've been doing this for about 2-3 years now, so I'm hopeful that I'll have some lessons learned that I can share on the panel today.
Thanks, Winnie. And come back.
Hello everyone, I'm the head of growth at Hockey Stick, and this is actually my fourth B2B company, and among these fourth, in 3 of them, I have implemented the ABM structures and ABM models. I had experience with one-to-one, one-to-few, and one-to-many, and today we are going to be sharing probably all of the best practices.
Great, thank you. So, time to get started with question number 1. Well, ABM does feel like a bit of a buzzword right now. Everyone is doing it. Or are they? How would you actually define ABM? And is it any different to demand generation? Winnie, help me out here.
Yeah, I think it is quite different. And for me, ABM is a strategy and philosophy even. It's a deliberate GTM motion, right? It's wrapped around accounts with the aim to deliver account engagement to generate pipeline and accelerate sales funnel. It's quite different from demand gen, if you like. It's very much wrapped around the contact level, right? So when we look about pipe generation in the past, is how many leads you generated, how many MQLs, and how much of that converted into a sales opportunity and stuff like that. It's quite a waterfall flow, whereas ABM is wrapped around the actual account. I like to think there are probably 3 types of ABM. And that's probably good to spend some time on this to set the thing for this panel, if that's okay, Nicola.
Okay. Absolutely.
Okay, so the first one is what I would call a high-touch 360 integrated named account pursuit across your entire GTM functions. So I'm talking about sales, marketing, partners, customer success, and maybe even professional services, right? So if you have accounts of a certain $1 million value, you want to design the highly bespoke, personalized experience to hunt this down and or even grow the account value. That's what we usually call the one-to-one ABM. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's this one-to-many programmatic ABM, leveraging intent data, identifying accounts with maybe increased purchase propensity at scale, right? Either from your list of target accounts or white spacing new accounts by using your intent data, ABM tools to surround these accounts with content to improve your program efficiency in an almost automatic fashion. And I think Steph can talk a lot about it from his experience in that space as well. You can even automate some of your pipeline now through ABM tools. And then there's a bit in the middle. You can call it maybe one to few or cluster. And that's very good for mid-market level, I found. And when you have industry clusters, but maybe not high enough value per account. So you can cluster these accounts together and deliver still the personalized experience in a way that's based on deal factors maybe, or use cases, but still leveraging intent data to be more precise. And that's how I look at it. The metrics are different as well. ABM metrics about your account engagement and how that accelerates everything about the account, whereas demand gen probably is more about pipe generations and conversion, stuff like that.
Thanks, Winnie. So we've got one-to-one, one-to-few, and one-to-many, and it's all about wrapping it around the accounts. And Larissa has shared a really good quote, which is it's about account tiering and prioritization strategy, not a GTM strategy. Steph, how do you look at it in a similar way?
Yeah, I think a quote that I really like about ABM, which I think probably echoes what Larissa is saying, it's really around focus. Our CRO talks about focus quite a lot when she talks about ABM. But I actually think that ABM is bringing the reality of sales into marketing. And that's really how I talk about it, because an experienced seller will know that you don't sell, especially in B2B, to a single person. And if you just put yourself in the shoes of a buyer, if you're trying to buy anything remotely expensive or disruptive, whether that's technology or processes, you have to convince a lot of people to say yes to your project, or you have to be involved in decisions that impact anything that sort of is in your world. So you need to convince a group when you're selling, and I think ABM really brings that to the forefront for marketing as well. And I would disagree with Winnie actually around demand gen. And I think demand gen is around contacts, but account-based marketing can also, account-centric demand gen, I think, is probably the future of both one-to-many ABM and demand gen. So I think it's really that bringing that reality of selling into marketing, and which is ultimately the reality of buying. That's what I would call ABM, whether one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many. It's really taking that knowledge that you sell to a group and centering it at the heart of your strategy.
Right, so it's all about the account. So account-centric demand gen, ACDG, right. Steph is starting a new acronym here. Canberk, anything you'd like to add?
For me, I think these two terms are definitely the buzzwords, but they're completely different than each other. Because when we
the
actually
5:30 train from Euston.
Oh.
yeah.
Right, we'll make sure you get that. So keep going, Canberk.
When we look at the definition of demand generation, it's about penetrating the complete target market. So we want to penetrate the whole audience. We want to show all of our content to this audience, but we don't necessarily focus on a specific company or specific industry. As Steph said, ABM is more about focus. You have to focus to a company or companies or specific topics there. But demand generation, by definition, is about penetrating as much target market as possible.
And lovely quote here from Sam: when marketing and sales align on their focus, that's where the magic happens. So this is about focusing in on accounts and the buying group for those accounts. So we've talked about how ABM is different from demand gen. I've always thought of ABM as just something you use when you've got an enterprise sale. Is that right? Is it just for enterprise business? Because how Winnie was talking about it was more about, there's different types, and it really depends on that account. And what even is an enterprise sale now? Is it over $1 million? Or I'm hearing people say that it's, 30 grand plus. Steph, help me here.
I mean, it's a good question. And I think you definitely need to be, you're doing account-based selling definitely in enterprise. But as soon as that reality hits for your SMB market or whatever other markets you're looking at, basically what I'm saying is when there's multiple buyers, when you're selling to a group, when to get a signature you need 3 or 4 people to sign off, you're probably in the world of account-based anything really. So for example, that might be around the 10K mark, but as soon as there's a buying committee, and maturity really then comes in when you're understanding the makeup of this committee. So what we sort of have referred to as personas in the past, if you're doing it at scale, or if you're doing it really individually, it's when you're looking at building out the buying committee on a one-to-one basis. But really having valuable content for each member of that buying committee or each persona, and having pieces of content that help them depending on what they're trying to do, whether that's do research around the problem or figure out the solution. That's ABM. And a lot of us are probably doing that already without realizing it, but structuring it and making it at the center of a strategy, I think that is really important. So short answer, it's relevant regardless of where you play, as long as you sort of have a buying committee, and it will become even more relevant when you go up market.
Right. And actually, you're seeing buying committees now at much lower contract values, as we've all seen over the last year or so, when more people need to be involved in getting the sign off.
I remember when I started at 6 Cents, we were selling to groups of 6 people. Then it doubled in the first year to 12, and now it's over 20. So yeah, it's definitely becoming more and more. It's hard to buy. It's hard to buy.
Yeah. Canbeck, what's your view on this? Do you agree with Steph?
Yeah, definitely. Like yesterday, I mentioned about the difference between SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. Okay, for SMB, we know that your buyer and your product user is going to be the same person. But for mid-market, that will be different people. Probably that they will be in the same team, but the buyer and the user won't be the same. In enterprise, they will be complete different people. And as soon as the user and the buyer will be different, then ABM, I think, can take place. It doesn't necessarily to be for a company for, I don't know, 1K plus employees or 1 million above contract. But if there is multiple people in the buying committee, then I think ABM can definitely take place.
Mm.
And Steph, you mentioned that lots of companies are actually doing ABM without necessarily realizing it. Winnie, you've seen the opposite as well. Lots of people say they're doing ABM, but they're actually not doing it.
I sort of, yeah, I think it could come back to that definition, that actually if that philosophy holds true, then maybe you're probably doing ABM, but on the other hand, there's a lot of technicalities involved, and sometimes people think that they are doing ABM, but they are not. And I still, I'm sort of like counter Laura's a little bit. I still think this is a GTM strategy, because the way you can structure your entire organization across your services, your pricing, your packaging, you can wrap it around your account based on your market segmentation. So if you have an enterprise accounts motion, you probably want to over service this account. $1 million opportunity is massive. And the way we are doing that, we actually have the entire GTM organization designed in such a way to pursue these accounts, not just in terms of marketing and sales, but the services are coming to oversell. We look at discounts, we look at what kind of pathways, we look at what kind of expansion. It is a GTM strategy wrapped around these accounts. Whereas in the mid-market is more volume play. And if you have a PLG motion, if your go-to-market is product-led, then you will have slightly different way of doing things as well. But that intelligence that ABM tool can bring to you just can help you to be a lot more precise and efficient.
Yeah, and something that you always just highlighted that you said earlier, it's about alignment as well, getting that not just marketing and sales, but customer success alignment too. So people are listening to this and thinking, actually, I thought ABM was maybe just an enterprise play, but we should really be looking at that because we've got multiple buyers in our target accounts. If you're thinking of launching an ABM play, what's the best way to test this out as an MVP before throwing loads of budget into it, buying lots of tools and investing? Canbeck, how would you test this out?
I think, yeah, definitely testing is possible, and it doesn't even need to have like a dedicated ABM tool or anything dedicated for ABM. What I always have done in my previous companies was to reverse engineer the sales funnel. Some people might suggest that, okay, you need to speak with sales to determine which companies that we want to target. But if we speak with salespeople, they will always say Apple, Netflix, Facebook. Everyone wants those whales. And salespeople are generally being a bit unrealistic about ABM, especially for MVP for ABM. So I generally reverse engineer the funnel to understand, okay, what is our actual ICP? What kind of companies bring the best ACV? What kind of companies have the lowest sales cycle? And how, what kind of industries we sell easiest? After that, basically I filter the companies and I use a tool like, I don't know, Cognizant, Zoom4. You can use any tool to basically filter those companies. And then I choose 10 to 20. And after that, what I did.
Hey.
Hello.
I'm trying to get on the same table.
Sorry, can someone go on mute? Thanks. Sorry, Canbeck, carry on. Lots of interesting
and
interruptions for you today.
the good thing with LinkedIn is that you can basically do company level targeting. And I generally try to choose a company that has at least 1,000 employees, because on LinkedIn, if you want to do one-to-one, you need to have at least 300 people in that company. So if you are going to do one-to-one, you can choose 1K plus companies, or if you are going to do one to few, you can probably choose like even 200 above companies. Maybe like if you choose 5, 10, that would be enough audience for LinkedIn. And then you can simply pivot your content for that companies. Like you can just change the content for that industry, for that company, or and you can simply tweak your current landing pages for those companies. And depends on your sales cycle, you can follow a simple process. For example, if your sales cycle is 3 months, you can basically create a campaign, and for the first couple of weeks, you can track the in-platform metrics. So what is the engagement metrics that you are getting? What are the click-through rates? So if these companies are actually engaging with your content, this is the first signal. If you are seeing above average engagement rates, above average click metrics than your usual campaigns, okay, you are in the right track. In the second, third week, you will want to see the website journey. So if these companies are now visiting your website, if they are visiting your website, obviously they are not going to convert right away. But if these companies are visiting the high intent pages, if these companies are actually engaging in your website, how much time they spend on the website, and this could take from 2 weeks to 5 weeks to 6 weeks, depends on your buying committee, like depends on your average buying committee, depends on the company size. And ideally, you should be able to see the form submissions in the 6th or 7th week. And if you are seeing a couple of form submissions, okay, MVP is going well, then you can confidently go to your CMO or your CEO and say, okay, we've been testing this for with 5% of your budget, and apparently we are getting signals. It seems to be working. And for the next step, let's increase it to 10%.
Great. So actually, we're looking at small budget, 20 accounts, and you should have some good leading indicators in the first 2 to 4 weeks, and actually something you can go to your CMO with within week 6 or 7 to say, yeah, I think this is something we should be doing. Winnie, anything
Yeah,
you can
definitely
add to that? Because we've got a few people here that are saying, yeah, we're just trying to work out how to test it.
We went through this, right? So I transitioned from, I've been with Seismic 4 years now. The first 2 years we had no ABM, and then we have transitioned to a place where we do have one now. It's working pretty well. When I started, I was looking at use cases and create test campaigns, pretty much what Cameron was saying there. But one thing I want to call out already is how you align your messaging in the use case. Typically, depends on how your CRM is set up. There should be some indicators in your CRM system to help you segment your database to start building out a framework and processes between sales and marketing. The first initiative I did was actually not for acquisition, but for deal acceleration. And that was quite clear, a need, because you can see in your database how many millions and how much money you have sitting there in stage 1 and 2, decaying and dying. And then you can very quickly pull out, if you're 80%, 90% of your opportunities, hard-earned opportunities are dying in the particular business case, right? Right. So you build something around that. So that's what we did. We did the in-pipe acceleration to start with, wrap around accounts and sharpen our operational analytics, showing value and communicate progress as we went. And that gained confidence both for myself and my team to be sure we are on the right track, and also for the stakeholders, because we can understand performance before scaling into other segments.
Brilliant, thank you. And Steph, I know you work with a lot of clients as they're building out their ABM play. What do you think is the minimum sort of spend you need to really actually test this out?
I think so. If I take my 6 cents hat off, when it comes to testing, anything, right? What you're trying to test is, you need a theory. And I think for me, the theory to test with ABM is, if I address a buying group, if I address the buyer as a group, which is an account, which is the A in ABM, does it impact specific metrics? So Canberk did a really good job of explaining the sorts of metrics you could test on the digital world. And I think Winnie hit on something which I think is a really good move as well, and that is using accounts where there's already interest. Then you're only testing whether the buying group approach is actually going to impact anything. So perhaps that could mean something as simple as open opportunities. We know these are actual high intent accounts, which means they're actually looking to buy. So we have confidence that this test parameters are tight. And then effectively what you're doing is, if I can address multiple buyers in this group, and that could just be as simple as persona marketing within open opportunities, does that make any material change in the close rate or velocity? And if so, how do I apply that further back in the funnel or further forward into the customer lifecycle? So I really like the open opportunities, and I think Canva's idea around testing on the digital journey is really interesting. I do think, having done this a few times, being careful with account selection is key, and that's why I quite like the approach of using open opportunities, especially if you've got very, very limited budgets.
Right. So 2 options here. You can go down the route that Canva talks about, where you have a few select ones, where you start to do some activity and really monitor those leading indicators, or you can actually look at some of these open opportunities and stop them from decaying, and see if you can actually show some positive impact there from your strategy. So let's say you're like, right, this is what we're going to go and do. How do you align the broader business about this move and this change to an ABM approach? Steph, let's stick with you. What would you do here to make sure that everyone is fully aligned and supportive?
Well, so ABM is one thing, right? But going up market also in this context is also, I think, part of this conversation. Why are you doing ABM? What does the business think you're doing with ABM? A lot of businesses think, oh, I'm going to do ABM, I'm going to get lots of pipeline from Tesco, Coca-Cola, and BP, and we're going to sell it within a year. But ultimately, we know that only really, a buyer will only buy when they're ready, right? And what ABM does, I think, actually really well is take a holistic view of accounts in their buying journey and helps you as a business understand who is going to generate your next piece of pipeline. So for me, actually, sitting down with a business and understanding what they're trying to do. If you're trying as a business to generate pipeline quickly, your account list build needs to look very different to if what you're trying to do is win marquee customers in the long term. So I was speaking to somebody yesterday, a former customer, and what his job he was trying to do is build a marquee customer program in France. And that took him 6 months just to generate visits to the website, etc., and actually have something positive for the sales team to work with. And then they turned that into pipeline and a win, but that took them a year. If what you're looking for a quick win is actually pipeline from upmarket accounts, you're actually better off picking accounts that are more likely to win. And this is why I like the open opportunities. But obviously what you need is, if you're looking at new ops, perhaps you can look into your CRM. There are sometimes clues that we miss in our CRM. MQLs, for example, we typically rely on in the pre-ABM world, and certainly in smaller, when we're trying to sell to smaller businesses. But have you got, for example, companies who are upmarket for you, where there are multiple MQLs in your CRM, or multiple people are visiting your website? Can you get as much information about your market to identify those in-market businesses, so that when you do start your ABM program, if it is a pipeline program, it's a very different story. A lot of that is Sixth Sense for us. And I'm happy to talk about Sixth Sense with whoever wants to, but if you want to try and hack it very, very short term, you can look in your CRM for those groups of leads from the same account. It's always going to, so yeah, that's a conversation. Do not get, sorry, do not get forced into a pipeline play with marquee accounts, because those two are very different programs.
Got it. So you've got to manage those expectations, because there may be something like, right, we need to move to ABM and we expect results tomorrow. Beck, how have you handled that?
Yeah, I would actually like to add one more thing what Steph said about CRM. I definitely agree. And actually, sometimes the data you need might not even be in your CRM. Like, nobody might even realize that that data needs to be in your CRM. In my case, for example, at DeepCrawl, we were a technical SEO tool. And for us, apparently, the best metric, even though we were not aware of that, was the number of website URLs. Because if a website had a lot of pages, they would need a technical SEO tool. They could not have done that with full-time employees. So for deep role, it was the minimum 1 million number of URLs. For hockey stick, apparently it is at least 1,000 live ads on LinkedIn. And now we know that if they have at least 1,000 live ads, it means that they are spending at least like 100K, 150K on LinkedIn, and they need to optimize their campaigns right away. For Cognism, it was a bit more complicated. If a company had at least 25 HDRs, if they are using Salesforce or HubSpot and Gong or Gemini, they would be the ICP. And this data was not available in CRM, but we were able to uncover that data by listening to Gong calls, by basically listening all of the first calls, all of the close lost calls, and apparently there were patterns. So sometimes you might need to find that pattern by yourself, and you might need to create that field in your CRM after understanding what is happening.
Got it. So are you looking at the right signals to see whether they're in your ICP? Super useful. Winnie, as you start to move up market and perhaps move towards this ABM play, do your KPIs and key success metrics change?
Yeah, it does. I mean, metrics are your strategy, basically, right? Because that's how your performance is going to be understood at the end of the day. So when you take on the ABM motion, you want to make sure you have the right measurements in place. And totally support what's already said. The data is so important to collect the correct or appropriate, I should say, data points to power your model. You might want to look at your attribution in a new way as well, because that model should come in and support your strategy to validate and monitor and optimize your progress as you go, right? So I think every company will have a slightly different goal what they want to use ABM for. If you're using it for deal acceleration, and of course you want to look at velocity and have a way to compare before and after and stuff like that. So I would suggest I spend some time defining together with your stakeholders what success looks like. People might have a slightly different goal and therefore different metrics framework, but set it up right up front. And remember, as already said, ABM is a longer term play. So it's not going to give you like immediate pipeline that you can report on your weekly forecast, right? So that metric changed right away. But if you set it up right, I would say maybe you should be able to start seeing impact depending on what you do within 10 to 12 weeks.
And Winnie, for you at Seismic, what would you say are your key metrics?
We look at engaged accounts. So we do look at how many touch points and we capture all those. We look at value. We do look at pipeline. So marketing generated accounts and marketing generated pipeline at the back of it and linking it all the way to the new bookings.
Okay. And Steph, what about you? Do you have similar metrics at 6 Sense?
Yeah, we actually, I would probably categorize our metrics into maybe KPIs and like hard metrics that we need to hit, goals, like KPIs and goals. KPIs are reach and engagement. Reach meaning if you have 100 accounts, how many of them did you actually try to hit? How many of them, say for example, by email or on our digital platforms, which is all done through 6 Sense, but how many of them saw your adverts? And an engagement is actually interactions. So how many of them interacted with your ads, your campaigns, your sales team? And ultimately, the less accounts you have, the closer to 100% that needs to be. And then what's really interesting actually in terms of goals is what you measure actually impacts what you generate. So just by having a pipeline goal and a revenue target, you actually, and this is based on some of our research, you actually see a 10% increase in both of those. And
just say that again.
Just by having pipeline and revenue targets, you increase attainment by about 10%.
Wow.
And then there's there's 2 more upticks, which really surprised me. Just by having an ABM list, you increase pipeline and revenue. And then by measuring pipeline and revenue against your ABM list, you increase it again. So measure what you want, because then it will help you get what you need, which I thought was really interesting.
And Steph, you said that was a report. Is that something you could share?
Yeah, probably. I'll find it. Kerry, who's our analyst, prepared that.
Brilliant. So Yuri, we're answering your question. Where can I reference these stats? Great.
I might have got it wrong now, so
we won't send it for a couple of weeks so people have forgotten. No, we'll
Okay.
try and get this out in the next couple of days. Kamban, You work for Hockey Stack Attribution. How does that play a role in some of these metrics that you should be tracking?
Yeah, I must say I am one of those lucky people because I can actually uncover the entire journey. And the good thing about Hockeystack, and actually that's how we smash ABM at Cognism as well while we were using Cognism. Because like as Steph said, in most of the cases, those companies, they don't click your ad right away. They don't come to your website right away. And actually, we released a new report a couple of weeks ago. Apparently, it takes an average of 700 impressions on LinkedIn for one company to visit your website, and around like 50 touch points to become an MQL. So when you think about that, that's a crazy amount of number. With Hockeystack, what we can basically do is to track from the first impression. So they don't necessarily click to the ad, they don't necessarily come to the website, but as soon as someone from that company sees that ad, we can basically understand it and tie with the entire journey. And once we run the ABMs, obviously the first metrics are the in-platform metrics, engagement rate, and the total reach. But even if they don't visit the website for like, I don't know, couple of weeks, maybe like for 1 month in some cases, it is not the end of the world for us, because we know that from the previous data, it will take around like a couple of weeks, but if we haven't reached a certain amount of impressions, we shouldn't be expecting that visit. So we basically track the total impression by company, and from first impression to the current impression level by company on Hockeystack. So basically we can understand, okay, we are reaching this company hasn't been showing the website engagement. However, probably they will show that engagement in the next 10 days.
And you just mentioned a report there that has this terrifying point about 700 impressions on LinkedIn. Is this something you can also share with us?
I'm just adding it to the chat right now.
Ah, fantastic. Some great takeaways for here. So we've talked about the different metrics for ABM. What about the channel mix? Winnie, do you actually see a different channel mix when you're thinking about ABM versus demand gen?
Yeah, I think so. There's a bit of like people not all agree on this call what demand gen is, ABM is. So I answer this question based on my understanding of what demand gen is, if that's okay. I think yes. I mean, demand gen for me, it is that marketplace. It's more waterfall, and therefore it's a lot of the digital stuff upfront. You have volume, and you capture a lot of interactions. Whereas with ABM, there's a really important point on data that I would like to make, because when you use ABM to move up market, if you think about in Europe, data is expensive and hard to get, but for ABM, you need to have the contacts in your system to be able to execute. So for me, the channel is not just a distribution, but also where do I get data from?
Right.
You probably want to look at data enrichment providers, maybe even partner with your inside sales to add new contacts. And I found events are actually quite useful in obtaining GDPR compliant data, and some of the one-to-one roundtables are kind of a good way to create opportunities for qualified or quality conversation with target accounts. And we're using our executives more as well, for the larger accounts, the kind of channel that you're talking about. I like to think about as touch points. And you've broadened that perspective from channel to touch points. And certainly maybe you can consider even PR would that be a channel for you to play with if they have your eyeballs, of your target audience. So just thinking about it quite differently.
Got it. So first of all, make sure you've got really good quality data. So all about data enrichment, and then stop thinking about channels and more about touch points and how best to reach them at different stages. Hanbok, what have you seen works really well in ABM in terms of touch points?
I think, yeah, like for demand generation, the online site I think might be working better. And by online site, I mean, okay, LinkedIn is the default, but alongside LinkedIn, podcasts, webinars, and all of those stuff that increase our online presence are really helpful for demand gen. But this stuff might not necessarily be helpful for ABM, because again, by definition, for ABM, we need to be focused. And unless we are really sure about who is listening those webinars, who is listening those podcasts, that kind of online sponsorships or not complete focus activities might not work. But I think for ABM, I really like to mix online and offline together, like actually sending gifts to those people, or like sending messages, like handwritten messages to those people. I think ABM is a system, as an activity that really allows you to be more creative and allows you to be closer to B2C side.
Interesting. So actually, you've got to think about the one-to-one. So webinars where you're doing one-to-many, it might be you're doing very small, very focused webinars, or more as Winnie was saying, these dinners, these round tables, and then also thinking about direct mail too. And please, everyone listening, if you've got thoughts on particular channels that work really well for ABM or don't, do share. Now, Steph, I know at Sixth Sense community is a big part of what you do. How do you find that plays into this?
Yeah, I think this actually goes back to going up market. And you know, the channel mix, there's not like a billion, well, there probably is a billion channels, but the channel mix between SMB and enterprise, and even our like strategic sector, which is the big companies, isn't that different. We do rely a little bit more on in-person and mid-market and enterprise because you can spend money. But what is different is really the content that people need. What I find fascinating in terms of sort of having done this before, going from a smaller set of businesses like startups or early seed companies or early stage companies, they're more interested in how do I get started quickly? What are the quick tips, the how-tos? How do I do this? And then as soon as you start getting slightly bigger, the content becomes a little bit more focused around how do I do it in context of what already exists here, whether that's processes or technology. That's the line of like, how ugly is my baby? And then how do I put makeup on the baby? So I think the content that we use here, and obviously you're not always the expert in that space, and that's why community works really well for us in the mid-market, connecting the industry and allowing the industry to help each other. But ultimately, connecting enterprise leaders with enterprise leaders makes a lot of sense, especially if you're going up market, because people would have done it before. So obviously to do that, you need some customers. So there's always the first hurdle to get over. But I think that's the big difference that I've seen, is the type of content people digest is slightly different. And that it just makes sense from a human perspective. If you think about what they're working with, that's probably why.
So it's not just about the distribution, it's about what you're distributing. So make sure you've got that right before you start investing money and actually getting that out there to 1, 2, 3, however many accounts it might be. Really helpful. Okay, one more question before we go into the quickfire round. What role does AI play in ABM and moving up market? Steph, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think let's start with like account-based marketing and just think about the data. I think AI, obviously there's multiple types of AI, but what's really interesting from an account-based perspective is you're no longer scoring an individual lead to try and find who's most likely to buy your MQLs. You're now scoring, say, 10, I think, on average, our study found. It was 10. I presented on it yesterday. There's 10 buyers in an average buying group. So that's a lot of data to start to score. And the more data you can collect on those people, the better, right? So we've typically working with our CRM and our marketing automation platforms, but as you mature and you might use a platform like Sixth Sense to de-anonymize your website traffic, get third-party intent data, you suddenly can start. And I think that again, the research shows there's 4,500 or 4,300, I think is the exact number, data points per purchase. So big data AI can be really helpful when it comes to figuring out who is actually in market. And then how do I tailor my approach depending on whether they are in market or not? And that's really like where we see it. Sixth Sense's Revenue AI platform, that's what it basically does. The first part, and then the second part is helps people actually execute against that data through advertising or emails, etc. And then obviously Gen AI will then help you sort of boost your results depending on how you use it. But I do think what's interesting about upmarket is your buying groups get bigger. So that's when you have even more data to analyze. So not only, so it can get pretty scary, the amount of data that comes in if you're not careful.
I think that's what Catherine's referring to. What are the 4,300 data points that we should be looking for. We can come on to this at the end. Winnie, what about you? Are you using AI at Seismic to support your ABM, and in what way?
Yeah, well, we have ABM tools as AI powered, but I think, just to pick up on Steph's point on content, the ABM play is sales and marketing alignment, and it's heart and soul, right? So on the content part, this sounds like shameless plug, but I do believe in AI powered enablement that drives really deep, strong field play into sales. So your sales teams get, the adequate knowledge, content, and skills at the right time, and the marketing gets an insight simultaneously as well. And if you have 60-70% of your new booking coming from your customer base, and even 80% in some cases, you need to have a very strong AI powered enablement. And at Seismic, we use Seismic on Seismic. That's how we do it, and it's working pretty well for us.
Okay, so everyone should be using Seismic and Sixth Sense. Canberk, any other tools or like AI support here? Could it be hockey stack?
I'm going to choose my words really carefully here because I don't want this recording to hunt me down for the rest of my career. Yeah, AI is definitely helpful, and AI will definitely change the way we do marketing, we do sales, we generate revenue. Yes, but in order AGI or AI to be that capable, it needs a lot of touch points. And we develop our machine learning system powered by AI on the back end, and now it is working with our current customers. Like, it can estimate what is going to happen, it can forecast the data, but to do that, it needs data. So like, if we are going to talk about ABM, that AI will not be able to tell you that, okay, you have no data, but if you want to start an ABM, you have to do that. It cannot do that. And it shouldn't do that because it needs to be your own data. It needs to be trained on your data. At least for the current technology, we are in 2024. So if it changes in 2027, I'm not taking any responsibility. But with the current technology, in order to use ABM with AI, that AI needs to be trained on your own data. And if you don't have already historical data for your ABM, then I don't think it can be used.
Great advice. So make sure it's trained on your own data, and Canberk, we'll make sure that your opinion expires in the next 6 months. We have a new one. Some great links coming through in chat as well, so make sure you're keeping an eye out for them. We will make sure we send these afterwards as well. Right, we're going into a quick fire round. Remember, panelists, no more than one sentence or I will cut you off. So first up, Winnie, what's the biggest mistake you've made or seen other companies make in moving up market?
Not having the right data to align content with sales. So we jump too quickly into campaigns and get everybody excited, and then fell on your face.
A good long sentence there. Canberk, what about you?
Managing expectations.
Always tricky. Steph?
Account selection. It's like that trifle that Rachel makes in Friends where she puts peas in her trifle. You've got to be careful because you can have the most beautiful trifle, but you might ruin it if you put the wrong things in at the start.
Right. What's your biggest learning when moving up market? Steph, stick with you. Is there a better apple than trifle here?
Yeah, I think just making sure that you have the basic grasp, and that is that you are acknowledging buying groups and the different personas within them, regardless of one to many, few, or one.
Canberk?
Good things take time, follow the signals.
Guinness, trifles and Guinness. Take that time. Winnie?
I'm going to throw in the car. I think you want to have specific attention to your operation to make sure it actually works. Otherwise, you'll have something that looks like a Ferrari, smells like a Ferrari, that without the actual motor, it doesn't run like a Ferrari.
We're getting some great metaphors in here. Where are we going to go next? What are 1 or 2 companies you think are doing ABM brilliantly? Canberk?
I think User Gems and Hockey Stack.
Of course. Winnie?
I would love to say it is my colleagues in North America. I'm learning a lot from them. They're connecting the ABM play with executive engagement and really work the accounts at all levels. And I'm seeing that it's pairing really nicely when you look at your actual buyer, but also executives to align strategically to shape the deal. Right.
And Steph?
Honestly, everyone I've met at Seismic, so Winnie included, all the way through to their BDR leadership, has really got a really good sense of how they run ABM. So I'm going to say seismic.
Brilliant. So are ABM tools worth investing in? Steph?
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't do it without them.
Winnie?
Yes, definitely, but prove the value first.
Okay, good. Cambeck?
Depends.
Depends on. I'm giving you another sentence.
Depends on your average sales cycle and ACV.
Okay, nice. Is outbound dead, Steph?
I think cold outbound is dead. Outbound to in-market accounts is not.
Okay, Winnie?
Too quick to kill it, Nicola, but I would say that the role of outbound has changed. If played strategically, it can help open up accounts.
Okay, so it's playing a different role. Cambeck?
Traditionally, outbound is dead. And can I continue?
Yes.
Traditionally, outbound equals to email marketing. So sending random emails is dead.
Okay. So last quickfire question. We're saying that traditional outbound is dead. Is demand gen going to die out? Cambeck?
I don't think it will. And I only have one sentence. Can I?
Mm-hmm.
If you have high volume, low cost product, you got to do demand gen. You cannot solely rely on ABM. Like if you are selling, I don't know, 1,000 contracts every month, ABM is not the answer. And demand gen should be there because lead gen is already dead.
Okay, so lead gen is dead, demand gen not. Winnie?
I actually think these two can work hand in hand, complementary to each other. Somebody asked a question, if there's no data on the ABM, what do? Do you rely on demand gen? You can use demand gen to generate signal to feed ABM. So I think, especially if you're just starting out, it could be complementary.
Okay. And the last word goes to Steph before we open up questions.
I think account-centric demand gen might actually end up killing ABM as a concept. I think the principles of full funnel still apply regardless of what you're doing. And to David's point in the chat, you need ABM to also help you bring people in market.
Okay.
So I would call it account-centric demand gen. It's always going to be around.
Right. So we're actually just changing it. It's not ABM, it's account-centric demand gen, ACDG. Okay, I think we're starting a whole new movement here, Steph. I'm liking this. As first seen on a webinar on the 14th of March. Remember this date, everyone. Going to become famous. Right. Thank you so much, everyone. We've got about 8 minutes for questions. So please do type them in. One just come in. Isn't good demand gen just ABM? Winnie, what's your thoughts on that?
My understanding of demand gen probably 2 years ago is just not the same. When I was doing demand gen, I was doing very classic waterfall demand gen. You generate pipeline and you hand it over to inside sales, and then inside sales do their processing. You focus on the conversion metrics. It's a very different way of looking at marketing and sales collaboration versus now I'm doing ABM. Is wrapped around the account, starting from the accounts. So perhaps it's not that much difference when it comes to the tactics, but the strategy and the planning and the back end and the metrics and the measurements completely different for me.
Got it. Really helpful. What role does email marketing play in ABM? Steph?
Yeah, so we at Sixth Sense use email marketing in a peer-to-peer fashion, and it's that peer connection for upmarket accounts basically. So we will send high-value content that touches on the pains that we've uncovered through all our various community activations, but it comes from like our CMO, our demand gen leader, etc., all to their counterparts. But crucially, so that helps us generate some of the signals, which I think was another question later. But as soon as it becomes in market, and as soon as we've seen that shift from research to buying mode, we switch it all off, and then we hand it over to the sales team, who we support with advertising and in-person events and stuff like that.
Right. Thank you. Cambeck, what have you seen the role of email marketing when you look at some of the attribution from your customers?
I think I think it's a really integral part of the strategy, but it shouldn't be the first step of the strategy. Like ABM shouldn't start with a random SDR sending an introduction email, but rather, as Steph said, like if it is used as an email from the CMO, from the CRO to their CRO to their CFO, and if it doesn't sound like all sales, but if it is more informative, if it is about, I don't know, showcasing the current customers, maybe sharing the framework or I don't know, the data that you have, that might work and that could be an integral part. But I think email marketing shouldn't be considered as a first step or as a, I don't know, outbound step of the ABM. It should be considered as a step for the C-levels, speaking with C-levels.
Thank you. One question that's come up a few times in slightly different guises is can and should you use ABM against accounts where you don't know if there's already interest? Or is that more of a demand gen tactic? Steph, what are your thoughts on this? So these are accounts that aren't active in the market, aren't showing any interest, intent in this.
Yeah, so I think ABM, if you think of it as a go-to-market strategy, that there is no difference to demand gen in terms of you have to create brand awareness and then convert it once they're in market. We actually know that you win the deal. Like the data says that 70% of decision making is anonymous, and that when buyers come to us as vendors, they're pretty much 80% of the way towards making their decision. And I dropped a WeTransfer link with the deck that went into that data in the chat. But ultimately, you need to be the brand that people know and learn from, regardless of what you call it. And ultimately, the way people learn from you and know about you is if you're relevant to them. And account-based marketing just means be relevant at scale or, more focused. So yeah, there's a huge role to play. And I think marketing's like the big influence marketing can have is actually almost before it's in market. And then with the sales team, you collaborate to convert those into opportunities.
Nicola, I have a point of view and a lesson learned on this one, maybe worthwhile sharing and also addressing Catherine's question.
Please do.
Yeah, so Catherine, so when I say using demand gen to feed ABM for me is starting from the list of accounts. But what if you don't have that list of accounts already validated, and what if you don't have the confidence in your list of accounts? So what I had to do is to launch campaign based on ICPs and persona, very classic marketing stuff. But then at the back of it, you generate signals that creates your list of accounts, which accounts are engaging with your campaign. So you use that engagement with your campaign as a signal of interest to feed ABM. Does that make sense? Because when I started, I didn't have a lot of data in my CRM. My website behavior signal was crap because the cookie consent stuff on my website. So I didn't have a lot of behavior signals. Keyword research or keyword search volume in my market for my new product category was really low. So all the good stuff data that you feed the ABM to, kind of a broken. So how did I start is I have to use campaign to create data points, and then from there overlaying the data with accounts to be able to run an ABM motion. Does that make sense?
And I guess even if you've got a list of 300 accounts, they're all going to be at different stages and have a different level of intent. So your play is going to be different depending on that account and where they are in that buying journey. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. So from Michi, if you had a team of 3 marketeers, how would you implement ABM? And if you need more info, then Mitchie, you might want to come off and add more to that. Any immediate thoughts on how you do this with a team of 3? I think part of the question is how big a team do you need to be able to do this effectively?
For MVP, I have always done it by myself. And okay, for a proper ABM structure, you need someone who is responsible for it, like dedicated. But for an MVP, you can basically do it yourself. Like you can listen to Gong calls by yourself. You can analyze the accounts by yourself. You can tweet the landing pages yourself. You can create the content by yourself. Maybe you would need a designer to create the logos and to create the stuff, but you can basically get a freelance designer. And yeah, I think that if you are going to launch an MVP, all you need is yourself.
Wow, so you're actually spoiled with 3. So if you do have 3, Steph, how would you structure that?
Well, I think, again, I think sometimes ABM feels like it's this big beast and it's very different to everything we've ever done. But if you start with what Winnie's just described, to me, what you described, Winnie, was actually, in a way, ABM. I know it's like demand gen with persona specific content, but a lot of people don't even do the, you know, the persona stuff. So if you're able to do persona specific demand generation marketing today, you're not a far reach from doing account based. It's just really how you look at the data that you generate.
Yeah.
And signals and how you turn them from an MQL, like what is a lead? That basically becomes the question. If you're already marketing to multiple personas, have content that's appropriate for the market you're going after, and have channels active, then you're pretty much most of the way there. You just really need to think about what is a real deal. Does it meet the reality of sales?
So lots of you who are saying we're thinking about doing ABM may already be doing 80 to 90% of it. And a lot of it is just bringing all that data together. And instead of looking at single individuals, looking at those accounts and how you bring that together. And sometimes that can be the biggest challenge. I think that's a great point to end on. Steph, Winnie, Canbeck, thank you so much. Amazing, amazing insight, feedback, and fabulous reports that you've all shared. We'll make sure we get these out to you in the next 1 to 2 days as well as the recording, because I'm sure you're going to want to go back and listen to some of this again. If people have further questions for you, are you happy for them to reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So if you have more, you want to hear more about the fabulous US team as well of Winnie, and any more insight, then do feel free to reach them there. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you giving up your lunch hour. And there will be more coming soon. We're doing regular webinars. The next one is on AI and marketing, which will be in April. And then in May, we're doing B2B influencers. So keep an eye out and we'll be sharing dates for that too. So enjoy the rest of your day and thank